There's just something about peonies. You know, those plants are just big and beautiful blooms. They come in late May, early June, and Master Gardener Ciscoe Morris joins me now. Peonies are one of your favorites, right?
I love peonies. For one reason, they're one of the only perennials we could grow in Wischeescin, where I grew up.
Is that also known as Wisconsin?
Yeah. You know, it's the only one that could take the cold. These, you can't kill them.
So what I think is powerful, ladies and gentlemen, is that the word on the street is it's this flower that's responsible for making this man a gardener. Thank you, Peony.
It's a famous story. I lived next door to the woman who was the Wisconsin champ for peonies. She got the blue ribbon every year at the state fair. I was a great Little League player. I went over 2 days when I was 10 years old before the state fair and hit every bud for a home run.
Oh my gosh.
La, la.
Oh, I cannot even.
I had to work with her all summer, and just seeing the way she looked at me, I know there's something valuable about plants.
That is how you learn?
That's how I learned. That was my first lesson in gardening right there. Boy, I had some good hits, though.
You better watch it, because now you have a garden full of them, and you don't want that repeated. Look at your...
No, if I catch anybody near these plants, they're in big trouble. That's Buckeye Bell. That's an herbaceous peony. That's the best herbaceous peony there is on earth. I love it. But see what happened? It flopped over.
It flopped.
So that's a big problem, and you don't want that because it doesn't look good.
No.
That's Bartella right there, which is, that's an Ito peony, so it's a cross between a herbaceous and a tree peony. You get really big flowers, you know.
So beautiful. Okay, so there's a lot of things we can do to learn how to take care of them. First of all, trick to making sure they bloom well.
Okay, you don't want to crowd them.
Don't crowd them.
If you crowd them, then what happens is they don't tend to bloom well.
Okay.
And also, you don't want to plant them too deep. You want those buds right at the soil surface.
Okay.
And then the magic ingredient right there, that alfalfa meal. Oh, la, la. They just feast on that stuff.
Alfalfa meal?
That stuff.
You've never told us about this before.
This makes, I talk about this. Any plant that kind of likes alkaline soil, if you add that around the plant, it makes
on top of the soil?
You work it in to the soil. And I always add a little organic fertilizer, flower food with it.
Anything with the 4-4?
Yeah, 4-4 is great. And, that was pretty good.
I learned from him.
This stuff makes, you can hear the dahlias start to cheer when you put that on there. It's like me when I see a Brussels sprout casserole, just out of control.
I mean, who doesn't feel that way when they see a Brussels sprout casserole? Yay! All right, how do you keep them from flopping? Because you mentioned they flop, and they're very heavy. These are a very heavy plant.
Oh yeah, these flowers are so heavy. So this is one of my favorite tools right here. It's called a Y-stick.
Did you make this?
No,
you
can buy these.
Looks like a divining rod. Hold on, let me see if there's water. Oh, I found a Ciscoe. Okay, so you stick these in the ground.
Yep, and then you can bend these any way you want.
Oh.
So then, you stick them in and you just make sure that, it's supporting.
Oh, and it just holds it up. You don't have to stick it to, okay.
Right, and so I use these if all of a sudden I notice things are starting to flop, I quick grab these. You can put like 4 around it of these, or you can just grow it through one of these things.
So you put so you put this in the ground almost like a table?
Before the peony starts to grow.
Okay.
And then it grows up through there.
And do you see this, or does it grow around
it? No, it grows around it. You don't even see this. It's pretty cool.
Okay.
You hope you don't. And there's one thing.
Yeah.
It's got these things you got to hold it up with.
Yeah.
Always use one of these
zip
plastic ties around there, because if you don't, it falls apart, the whole thing collapses, and oh la la.
Wow, not good.
Mess.
All right. The one thing I've also noticed is that you've been kind enough not just to bring these peonies, but ants into my studio as well. Thank you, that. But I do understand that peonies are notorious for having ants on them, right?
For years and years, people believed that an ant had to go to the bud or the bud wouldn't open. It was the biggest myth
Is it a
there
myth?
ever was. It's
Is
a
it a
total myth. Even when I was a kid, I worked as a gardener at this church, and the gardener always told me, yeah, those ants got to go to the peonies. You know, but what the ants do is they get there's something sweet on there, so they're hanging around on there. You bring these in, put them in the middle of the dinner table, and all of a sudden people have ants crawling across their plate. Oh, la, la. I used to get yelled at for that. You got to wash them off or get those ants off.
Okay, wash them off. Even if you buy them in the grocery store?
It could be.
Could be. All right, just wash them off
yep.
for safety so that you don't get in trouble for bringing ants to your dinner table.
Oh, that's big trouble.
And most
too.
importantly, don't take a baseball bat to a peony bud. And that's what we learned here today from Ciscoe.
They fly so good.
No!